Today is a feast of the Assumption. And Marian feast days always remind me of my mother. For as long as I can remember, she had a devotion to Mary. And when Mom went into the hospital, she kept a rosary next to her bed, just like at home. The last time I drove to the hospital on the day Mom died, she wasn't conscious. So I picked up the rosary and I began to pray. Mom always liked the joyful mysteries, maybe because they recount the most memorable mother moments of Mary's life, the moments of wild grace that blessed her, and the lives of so many moms who celebrate what I have always felt is the sacrament of motherhood. With Mom bound to a bed for 2 months, the rosary helped her escape the limitation of physical illness and feel the familiar connection to Mary and the community of faith that had nourished her for a lifetime. How do I know this? Well, while her response to my presence in the room was barely visible, there was a point when I was praying aloud, when the monitor indicated changes in Mom's heart rate, her pulse, and her breathing. And then I looked at her face, and I saw a tear trickling down her cheek. Even within the hour of her death, seemingly unconscious, Mom was responding to prayer, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. What I discovered that day is that prayer is so much more than the sum of its words. It's a relationship, an ongoing conversation, and a decision that Mom had made long ago to surrender her spirit and her body to God. Maybe it was in all those hard pregnancies and long labors. Or maybe it was when the doctors diagnosed uterine cancer and breast cancer following the birth of my sister. Maybe it was the experience of a mastectomy and a hysterectomy on the same day in 1960. The loss of her good health, the pain of surgery, the hard work of healing with 4 kids underfoot. I don't know, because Mom's journey remained hers alone. Not unlike Mary's journey. We know so little about her life and her decision to say yes. It seems to have been a response of mind and heart, body and soul, flesh and bone. Marrow bone, to borrow the expression from Irish poet William Butler Yeats. In his poem, Prayer for Old Age, he begins like this: God, guard me from those thoughts men think, in the mind alone. She that sings a lasting song thinks in a marrow bone. It seems that Mary's response came from every part of her being. She said yes with her lips, but that meant physically bearing a baby at a very young age. Yes to nursing him, to holding him, to mounting a donkey and carrying him into exile postpartum, into Egypt, so far from her family who could have helped her so much in those days after childbirth. She said yes to the gut-wrenching anxiety of searching for her son when he was lost in Jerusalem. She said yes to the fear that must have filled her when her son's enemies began to plot against him. It wasn't just a spiritual yes that stood on Calvary agonizing with her son in his suffering and death. Her yes was so deep and so demanding, both spiritually and physically, that I imagine it was cellular. Rooted in marrow bone, yes, in every tissue, every muscle, every drop of blood running through her veins. Mary's yes made her whole, a wholeness for which we all long. She shared so single-heartedly and so fully in the life of Jesus that God invited her to share fully in his resurrection. Body and soul were assumed into heaven. There is no gospel account of the Assumption, which is why today we hear the story of the Visitation and Mary's proclamation of the Magnificat. It actually wasn't until All Saints' Day in 1950 when Pope Pius XII defined Mary's Assumption as dogma, stating the Church's belief that Mary's yes, the yes that changed the world, permeated her being. Today's gospel tells us that she felt the infant physically leaping in her womb as her spirit was rejoicing. Everything in Mary and everything about Mary, her words, her womb, her spirit, surrendered so completely to God's will that they could not be separated when her time on earth came to an end. So if heaven could welcome a female body, why can't the hierarchy? Its own dogma says a woman's womb brought God's will to fruition, and her breast nourished God's dream for the world. If a woman could hold Jesus in his lifetime and raise him to be the man who consecrated the world, why can't a woman hold Jesus and raise him on the altar of a Catholic church? Why can't a woman consecrate bread and wine while praying our Eucharistic prayer, "This is my body"? It was her body that gave us Jesus. Why can't a woman give Jesus from the altar every day? Why can't our church say yes, as Mary did? God consecrated the female body and everything she did as a woman and a mother to carry the good news into the world and invite us to be people of the resurrection. The Rosary, the prayer that remembers the life of Mary and the fruit of her womb, changed my mother's life and death. And I know from Mom's last tear, her parting gift to me, that if we say yes, as Mary did, perhaps we can become whole as individuals and maybe someday as a church. Amen.